I'm, as you know, Joe Bevilacqua, the President and CEO of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. We want to welcome you to our virtual program on workforce development. It's a critical issue. Every single one of our businesses we speak with, doesn't matter how large, how small, always raises the question of workforce issues. And so we're very, very honored and pleased that our secretary, who's doing a fantastic job, is with us today. Also, Abel Vargas is with us. He's the executive director of the MassHire's Merrimack Valley Workforce Investment Board and Career Centers. I want to say thank you to our two sponsors, More Staffing and the Merrimack Valley Chamber Means Business Programs. And I also want to let you know about an upcoming program that we're doing. This will be a quick commercial. Yesterday, with the executive director of the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, we hosted a program on agritourism. On Thursday, we're hosting the Speaker of the House, Robert DeLeo, and the Merrimack Valley Area State Representatives, another free program to sign into. And you can find the information on the Chamber website, or if you have any questions, call in, and we'll be glad to provide you the link. And I want to introduce our special chairperson. Michael Sullivan is chairperson of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Board of Directors Education Workforce Development Committee, a very, very important committee as part of the Chamber leadership. As you know, Michael was selected because Michael has a unique background, being the former mayor of the city of Lawrence. And also he was involved, obviously, with the school committee as chair of the school committee. And also he was the lead elected official for the Workforce Investment Board. So he brings a unique set of circumstances. And we want to say welcome to Michael Sullivan. This is our first conference together, Michael, and I wish you the very best. So Mike will introduce our speakers, and we look forward to a tremendous program. And again, what we'd like to ask is we will have the secretary speak and then Abel, and then we'll take questions after they speak. So if you could hold your questions, please do so. So Michael, congratulations and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be here on my first meeting that I'm hosting. And if you were on 20 minutes ago, you would have seen that I'm not that technically savvy, but everything's working out now. And thank you, Joe, for all the work you do putting these programs together. And thank you to the Chamber staff. And of course, thank the members of the Chamber, hundreds of companies that belong to this still growing Chamber during these really, really tough economic times. And, 2020 has been a year of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, as they say, and us going week to week and month to month and not really sure what the future will bring. But I think the one thing that's comforting is knowing that we have some great leadership, and we're going to hear from two of our local leaders today, one being Secretary Acosta, and the next being Executive Director Vargas, who will give us their comments and their ideas. And then once they both speak, what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions, audio questions, or if you want to sign on and do an email chat, I'll get that and I can ask the appropriate party. So thank you again, Joe, for allowing all this to happen and the great work that the leadership from the Chamber does. And I want to especially thank Secretary Acosta for being here and taking time out of her extremely busy day and schedule that she has been on and will continue to be on as this economy begins to open up. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about what the Secretary has been doing and what her task is, and then we'll be honored to listen to her speak. But thank you, Secretary, for taking time this morning to address us. In your role, you manage the state's workforce development and labor departments to ensure that workers, employers, and the unemployed have the tools, training, and safety resources needed to succeed in this Massachusetts economy. Prior to joining the Baker administration, she was widely respected in the finance and banking services with over 30 years of experience in that field. Secretary Acosta was a director and a planning committee member of the Merrimack Valley Workforce Investment Board and was appointed a Northern Essex Community College trustee by Governor Baker. She has been named one of Boston's most influential women by the Women of Harvard Club and El Planeta's top 100 most influential Hispanics in Massachusetts. She has also been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Association of Latino Professionals. Born in Cuba, she earned a Bachelor of Arts from Wesleyan University, where she was a member of, and this is a good trivia question, the women's varsity ice hockey team. She is the proud mother of 5 children, and we are honored that you are here today to share some of your thoughts on the economy and what the future will bring. Secretary, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mike. And my apologies for the lighting here. I've been on WebExes all morning and the lighting was perfectly fine. And my computer must not like Zoom. So here we are.
You look good and you sound.
What's that?
You look good and you sound good. Everything's good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Joe, for inviting me here so we can have a conversation with your members. Thank you for all your time, because I know that your time is also very precious as you're working so hard to keep your businesses alive and going. And obviously we're in a very challenging period. You know, when I took this job about 3 years ago, pandemic was not in the job description. Pandemic was not in the job description for any one of us here on these Hollywood squares that we're seeing in our screen. But I have been so proud of our team and our Commonwealth, how we have all risen to the occasion and tried our best to make the best of a very, very difficult situation. The governor, as you know, has been very much data-driven in all of his decisions. And yes, it has hit our economy extremely hard. But our main task is to keep people alive. And that's one of the things that the governor has really been very strong in as he looks at all the measurements and the day-by-day data. You know, we started this journey about six plus months ago now, unbelievably enough. On March 14th, we knew that we were going to have to do something different with our unemployment system. We knew that we were going to have to put new regulations in to cover this brand new circumstance of this COVID-19 and why people would cycle out of work and not go to work. And frankly, we didn't want people that were sick to go to work. So we immediately worked on some emergency regulations in order to allow for some flexibility in our UI claimant pool. We saw claims, as you all know. I've been on weekly calls with the business community. You were hearing me talk about the avalanche of claims that we were receiving. We were receiving claims for 10 consecutive weeks. We received over 30,000 claims a week. We had never seen that before. So every time that we all talk about unprecedented, right? There are some catchwords that have been overused during this pandemic, and I think unprecedented is one of those words, as well as new normal, and you guys all know the rest. But the unprecedented number of claims that we saw really forced the department to do things very differently, and we were a completely in-house shop. All our people were on premise. We had no ability to go remote. So here we are dealing with the volume and the virus at the same time. So we quickly had to pivot to a solution to make sure that our people were safe, but the Commonwealth was also getting their our claims processed. We're getting our claimants processed. So we did a very, very rapid scale up of our workforce. We literally went from 50 people in our customer service center to 2,000 people within 3 to 4 weeks. And we really scrambled. Not only did we add people, but we bought a lot of computers. And we very, very quickly got everybody off premise into their homes with new technology. So this was a very complicated logistics exercise, but I'm really proud of the team, the way they scrambled and they got it done. You know, over these past few months, we have fielded millions of phone calls from constituents. We've made inbound calls, and we've made about 400,000 outbound calls. But while we were doing that rapid scale up in those first 3 to 4 weeks, we had to make sure that people were getting their questions answered. So we started a virtual town hall, and we had virtual town hall meetings every single day. And over the course of 6 months, we had over 500,000 residents of Massachusetts join us in our town hall that became almost like a radio talk show. And we answered questions. We had them in English, we had them in Spanish, and we had them in Portuguese. I even tried my hand one time in Portuguese. I will never do that again. I feel very sorry for my Portuguese friends that I actually butchered the language that way, but I tried. And we were all very, very committed to making sure that we did everything we could to really address the desperation that we were hearing from everyone that was calling in. It was and still is a very scary time for folks. So, you know, in addition to that, we really partnered with the business community, and that really made all the difference in the world. I mean, we were all in. Every single stakeholder around the Commonwealth, we were all in. Listening to you, listening to the things that were concerning you, and at the same time working with many of your employees that became unemployed. One of the things that really saved the unemployment system, I think, if you read some of the national press that was going on, many systems around the country did crash. We were fortunate that our system did not crash, not because it's a beautiful system, but because 2 years ago we went to the cloud. So when we went to the cloud, it really expanded our capacity, because I guarantee you that we would have been down that Monday afternoon if we had not gone to the cloud. However, we are still very focused on technology, and we're very focused on moving this unemployment business application into a more friendly, more intuitive application. And we have some money in the IT bond bill to do that. We're very excited about that. So hopefully, certainly within my tenure, I hope to have a new unemployment system for all of us to share and to be able to bring our claimants the level of service that they deserve. I just want to take a moment, though, just to talk about the economy and to talk about our numbers. For 2 months in a row, we had the highest unemployment rate in the country. And you know, we did a lot of digging and a lot of soul searching as to how could we go from 2.8%, right, being the best economy almost in the country, to being the worst economy in the country. Obviously something that the governor was very concerned about, and we had to do some digging but really it came down to the basics. It came down to the basics of, we got hit very hard with coronavirus very early. We closed fast, and we're opening in phases, right? And that's what happens. I am happy to say that for the month of August, our unemployment rate did drop by almost 5%, which was the biggest drop in the country. And our unemployment rate went from 16.2% in July to 11.3% now in August. And of course, this is reflective of more things opening. As more things open, that rate will hopefully continue to come down. We're doing it very carefully. We want to make sure that that we don't open things so widely that the virus goes up again, and then we're back to the same Groundhog Day, doing the same thing and closing things up again. You know, we've taken a big hit. We estimate that we've lost from February to April almost 700,000 jobs, and a lot of those jobs were in the private sector. About 660,000 of those jobs were in the private sector. Since April, we have replaced about 270,000 of those workers, or about 41%. So we've come back about 41%. And the two largest sectors that have seen the greatest recovery are construction and manufacturing, which is actually I'm very hopeful about that. So construction, we had 36,000, almost 37,000 jobs added, followed by manufacturing, which had a recovery of about 53%, or 14,000 jobs that were lost. So again, we're starting to see some of those industries come back. By far, no surprise to anyone in this call, the largest job loss we had was in leisure and hospitality, followed by education and healthcare, which got really, really pummeled. And if you look at, and one of the things that concern me as secretary, and should concern all of us, is when I look at the claimant pool and I look at who is unemployed, our claimant pool are very, very low wage workers, as you all know. disproportionately women and disproportionately people of color. Before the pandemic, women made up a third of our claimant pool. Now women make up 2/3 of our claimant pool. That's significant. Where I've been speaking to a lot of our large employers also in the Commonwealth, as well as small employers, and they're telling me that women are dropping out in all levels, from low skill to researchers, professors, doctors, because of the homeschooling and the fact that they really difficult to either be away and have a 5-year-old on Zoom, or even be on premise with, in your house doing remote work, as many of us are doing with a child. And I know many of you have small children around the Hollywood squares here, and you understand the pain. I'm fortunate that my 5 are already adults, and well, they sort of adults. They're adults, and they don't need this kind of a level of supervision. So as we move from this, conversation about unemployment, we really have to now focus on reemployment. Unfortunately, we know that about 30% or so, 40% of our claimant pool of our unemployed folks will be permanently unemployed. And we're very concerned about that. Before this pandemic, I was talking to you about there are no jobs, there are too many jobs and not enough people, right? We had no one looking for work. Now it's the opposite. Now we have almost 400,000 people that we've identified as probably permanently separated, and we have 150,000 job postings. So we're completely in the opposite place that we were before the pandemic. The thing that strikes me though about that is we did a lot of work, and Abel can speak to this. We did a lot of work with our regions, and some of the basic regional planning that we did around the sectors that really needed attention and skilled workers were manufacturing, IT, and healthcare, as well as the trades. And as we look at now post-pandemic, what are the changes? They're very actually similar. We still need those skilled workers. So the need for training is absolutely there. The need for job creation is absolutely there, because again, there's still not enough jobs, but there's still people aging and there's still people retiring. So we need to replace those. We need to replace those workers. So some of that same phenomena that was going on before the pandemic is actually still here. Some of it has obviously been accentuated a lot more since the pandemic. What we've been doing, and Abel will, I'm sure, talk about in the career centers, our career centers are closed to walk-in traffic, but our career centers have always been open to virtual training. So throughout the Commonwealth, we've been doing virtual training, we've been doing virtual job fairs, and we're also going to increase our tools to make sure that we have more seamless searches for our claimant pool, so it would be easier for them to go to our job quest and match their resume to an open job. So we have more things coming in that area. We know that technology is going to be really important as we need to scale and offer more of our services in a virtual way. We're also really aggressively going after federal grants and making sure that we take advantage of every single grant that the Department of Labor puts out there, and we have been doing that consistently since this pandemic began, frankly, pre-pandemic, and we've sought a $7 million disaster recovery fund, and this will train about 340 individuals to access occupational training and career support, leading to full-time employment. We have also applied and secured for $1.5 million in funding for apprenticeship training. We really feel that there's a big need for apprenticeship training, and that continues. And that grant will help us train about almost 1,000 people in biotech, healthcare, transportation, and other sectors that contribute to the safety, quality, and health of our residents. And the last thing I'll talk to you a little bit about is just our WorkShare program. If you're not familiar with WorkShare, WorkShare is a program that businesses are able to reduce the hours of their employees and keep them working, and the unemployment fund pays for the other piece of it. So the person is made whole, and businesses can reduce hours of their employees from 10 to 60% of their employees' time. Many of our employers have applied for this. We have over 500 new applications right now for WorkShare, and many employers have been very excited to being able to take advantage of this program because they didn't have to let people go. They had the same loyal workforce that they had before. They just couldn't afford to pay them for full-time work. So we paid for some, the employer paid for some, they kept the talent, and as their business recovers, they can bring them back without retraining people. And Joe had asked me real quickly to speak about the Workforce Training Fund. As you know, the Workforce Training Fund is available. All of you pay a tax on the Workforce Training Fund, so please take advantage of that. It is all the information that you need to know is through the Commonwealth Corporation. That's who executes our Workforce Training Fund. And you can use that more than ever now. We're finding people that are using workforce training funds to really pivot into this new COVID world, new training that they need for COVID safety, et cetera. And also remember that ESOL, you can use Workforce Training Fund for ESOL training. And that is, again, going to be more important than ever as I look at the claimant pool and I look at how many people may not even speak English. ESOL training is going to be very important. So I want to thank you for listening to me this morning. I really don't want to do all the talking. I'd rather answer questions, and I know Abel wants also to say a few words. So thank you for having me, and looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Secretary. We really appreciate it. And yeah, if you can, we appreciate you hanging on, because I'm sure there will be a few questions. But this is a great lead-in now for Abel Vargas. And Abel is the Executive Director of the MassHire Workforce Board. This board is composed of business and community leaders who are appointed by the Mayor of Lawrence on behalf of the communities that make up this region. The board, under Abel's leadership, works closely with local cities and towns to bolster economic development and employment, and to provide businesses in our region with the best trained workforce possible. Prior to becoming Executive Director, Abel served as Business Development Director for the City of Lawrence. And Abel, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to hearing your words of wisdom.
Thanks, Mayor. It's always a pleasure to see you and hear your voice. Thanks for moderating, Joe. Thanks for putting this together. Secretary, thanks for your leadership. As the state was working hard to figure things out and put in place a plan that now works and is helping us support our workforce and our businesses. You know, locally we had a lot of challenges. We had a lot of phone calls, responding to a lot of employers, a lot of folks in the workforce asking us questions for answers that we just did not have. But through the leadership of the secretary and her team and her staff, we were really quickly able to get a point of contact that will allow us to ask those questions and relay that information to our local constituents. You know, the unemployment, filing for unemployment, that process was very challenging, and we put in a few different processes in place to help people through that process. But those town halls, let me tell you, people use them. People were on them. It got people through the process, people that had limited language skills, particularly in Lawrence and in Haverhill. We have a significant amount of people with Spanish as the primary language. It really made a difference and lessened the burden of the work that we had to do, especially since we weren't able to deliver services one-on-one, face-to-face. And to this day, we're still not doing that. But as the secretary said, we despite not being physically open, we continue to deliver services. Our career centers are still fielding calls from employers, still providing resume workshops, job search services, among others, to folks in our region, and really being the connection between the workforce and the companies. You know, as we've had conversations about the workforce and the employers as well, you know, we've seen some major closures of business. Among them, the largest is Southwick. You know, 400 employees. 200 of them are primarily Spanish speaking. 100 of them are primarily Vietnamese speaking. And really, you know, at least for Lawrence, 150 people from Lawrence work there. So we're really trying to figure out how we could provide services to the people that were laid off at Southwick. And there are some other large layoffs in our region. And we continue to work with leadership of those companies to direct people to new job opportunities. You know, the Merrimack Valley is very familiar with disaster, and I think about small businesses in our region, particularly in Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover, and they made it through the gas explosions, and there were many closures and challenges with being able to operate under that environment. You know, and less than 2 years later, or less than 2 years later, we have this. So but the area that really worries me is our small Main Street businesses and how they're going to be impacted. And really, there's no sense of how many of them will close their doors permanently, and how many will come back to the same vibrant nature that they were in prior to this disaster. But with that, it does present an opportunity, I think. If there are a ton of people that are being laid off in the service industry, and food service rather, what do we do regionally to provide the training opportunities for those people? And what skill sets does someone in the food service have that's transferable to another industry? So we have a lot of work to do in terms of redirecting people's skills to a place where they could still be able to provide for their families and fill the workforce needs of our region. And that comes with training, it comes with support, and our career centers and the board is committed to do that. At the height of our unemployment, at the height of COVID unemployment, the region had an unemployment of 21%, just about. And the region now has an unemployment of 13%. But when we look at our communities with the highest amount of population, those being Haverhill, Lawrence, and Haverhill, Lawrence at its highest has a 33% unemployment, now at 23%. Haverhill had a high of 20%, and now currently at 13%. And Methuen had an unemployment of 21% and currently at 13%. Those are big numbers, particularly for Lawrence, and particularly when you have 80% of the population being Latino and 50% of the population speaking primarily English in their household. So we have to figure out, and the secretary mentioned ESOL programs and the importance of that. So we're really looking at the opportunities that the state's making available so that we could support the folks in our region through those programs so they could find their way back into gainful employment. Yeah. And despite the high level of unemployment, we have seen some positive signs, as the secretary mentioned, and Eric Nelson's on the phone. He's one of our business service reps here in the Merrimack Valley. We've received a ton of phone calls from manufacturers specifically, and they are looking for people, and they reach out, and we're trying to connect them to the workforce. And we've had a number of efforts where we've tried to connect people to those jobs. And a good example of that is something that we tried out with the Southwick workers. Southwick has been used to communicating with their staff through text messages. So we figured, let's do this text message thing with those workers, and we created an online an online form that we sent to the workers of Southwick in Spanish and in English. And of the 400 workers, about 50 people filled out that online form, which allowed us to connect them to employers that were looking and interested in workers from Southwick. So during these times, you have to be creative. You have to identify resources that maybe weren't as clear before, and do your best to try to connect people to opportunities that exist. And if opportunities don't exist, connect them to the training that will allow them to gain those opportunities. With that, Mike, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Abel. We appreciate that. I have an email question for the secretary. So the question is, what do you anticipate to be the cost of unemployment insurance next year to replenish the unemployment insurance trust fund? It has been estimated to be as high as a 60% increase. Can you comment on that, Secretary?
I certainly can. So we are scheduled to move from Schedule E to Schedule G next year. And what does that mean? That is an increase of about 60%. That is correct. We normally issue the rates end of December. They're payable in April of next year, April 2021. We're looking at different levers to see how we can reduce that burden to employers, but we've always known that this day might come, right? That if we ever were hit with a recession or a reason to drain that fund, that employer's schedule would have to move. I want to remind all of you that can only be changed by legislation. So it's not a policy decision, it's in legislation. So if we were to freeze the rate where it is or do anything other than move to G, that would require legislative action. And we're all working together to try to figure out what's the best path forward. Right now we are borrowing interest-free from the government. And that was part of the CARES Act. Beginning in January of 2021, we begin getting assessed 2.4% on all our borrowings. And if we don't pay that back by September 2021, then there's another FUTA tax that's added to the unemployment tax. So again, working with my friends in the administration to see what can be done about that steep increase.
And could we use any federal funds to reduce that rate increase? Did you know, Secretary?
That is a really great question. So some states have used a portion of the CARES Act to reduce the borrowing from UI Trust. Frankly, you know, if you looked at across the country and how disbursements were given by the federal government, a state like Massachusetts, frankly, got less than some other states per population. And we've had to use that fund for the pandemic more exclusively. So we have not chosen to use that for the UI Trust Fund. UI Trust Fund will be about $2.5 billion in the hole by December. So that's the money was used elsewhere. So right now we don't know. We're not anticipating any action before the election, but there are many states that are in this borrowing position, at least 21 states that are borrowing right now from the federal government for the UI Trust Fund. And there obviously is a lot of requests of Congress to do something about that and to help the states out, help states and municipalities. But as you all know, that those efforts have not gone anywhere at this point.
Right. Thank you, Secretary. Let me ask this question, and maybe we'll steer this one up to Mr. Abel Vargas. Do you see any issues coming up in the near future where cities and towns will be taking a substantial budget hit that would affect the hiring and the sustaining of police, fire, DPW workers, etc.? So that's the question.
It's honestly, it's hard for me to say, but you know, I spent enough time with the mayor of Lawrence to get some sense from him. And at least for Lawrence, they've taken a lot of steps to manage the budget so that it's not so much of an issue. But I think a lot of states have budgeted a cut in local aid, anticipating the cuts coming. And what that means, at least for Lawrence, is not so much cutting staff, but it's not taking on certain plans that they had to maybe hire more people or invest in infrastructure or invest in capital planning. So I think what communities are doing is pricing in the fact that they will not get as much aid, and foregoing some projects and or hiring at the local level, which could have impacted things like fire and police.
Sure. Thank you, Abel, for that. Do any of the viewers or people on the line have any questions for the secretary or for the director?
Hi, this is Eric Nelson. I'm a business rep with MassHire Merrimack Valley. How are you?
Hi, Eric. How are you? Thank you for being on.
Good. Not so much a question. I did hear some folks talking about ESOL training, and I just wanted to kind of promote that the Workforce Training Fund has made some changes to their grant programs. And one of those changes is in the general grant, which is the large $250,000 grant with matching funds, is they are waiving the matching fund requirement for ESOL training as built into part of the workforce grant. The other change, and so that's good news. The other change is the Express grant, which was typically designed for businesses 100 or smaller, has been expanded to all size businesses. So we're definitely working to get that out to the business community. Additionally, I want to thank Secretary Acosta for her focus on the apprenticeship program, because we in Merrimack Valley have been using that program pretty profusely with the advanced manufacturing students we have, and we've been very successful with that. So just want to put a couple plugs in. Thank you.
Eric. Thank you for yes, talking about those recent changes to the Workforce Training Fund. Again, we're trying to respond as nimbly as possible to the current situation. And I'm a huge proponent of ESOL and a huge proponent of making sure that businesses have the tools that they need to train their people adequately. And we are going to need that, certainly with the claimant pool that we're seeing.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for that. Joe, you have a comment, Joe?
Yes, I just wanted to say one thing, that because no one had any idea what this pandemic was going to do, and because no one had any roadmap from prior years, I just really want to commend the secretary. She's on those state calls every Friday that I'm able to call in and listen. And the information that she's provided has been invaluable, because really no one really knew where to turn or how bad this was going to be. And the information she gave was absolutely spectacular. And I also want to recognize Abel for the work he's been doing with the Workforce Investment Board, because they're the local contact that our businesses go to. And I want to say you've made a real difference. And, we're very, very fortunate to have both of you in office helping us, because obviously the business community has been devastated. And obviously we're more concerned about the future as we go forward, as we come into these colder months. And then, as the secretary always knows, when I speak to the Secretary Keneally, who chairs the calls, we're obviously very concerned about what happens here, because we're on the New Hampshire border and it does have an impact. And we look forward to any assistance you can provide here in the Merrimack Valley and continued information. And again, I just want to say thank you. I've spoken to a lot of business people. We send out advisories as soon as we get the information from the state, and they have nowhere else to turn. They look to us. And again, I want to say thank you, because it's made a difference having those weekly calls and the information that you provide, enable your readiness to help companies has been very, very well noticed. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you. Are there any more
Thanks,
questions or comments for the guests?
Can you just tell Michael, would it be possible, Abel, would you just give your email address or your website address and a telephone number? How if people after today have a question or call, just if you would just reiterate how they reach you.
I was on mute. Sorry. People could reach me via email at avargas@masshiremvwb.org. I'm a cell phone guy, so I'll give you my cell phone number. If people really wanted to contact me there, 978-204-0853. And again, we just trying to connect people to the resources. And we don't always have the answer on hand, but we do the best we can to get people answers quickly, so they could go about their business of running their business.
Thank you for that, Abel. Well, if there's no other comments at this point, Joe, I guess if we were live, we would be handing a couple of chamber gift bags out, I guess, right? So we'll have to take a rain check. Hopefully we'll be doing that soon. But I want to thank Secretary Acosta and Director Vargas for being here today, taking a real bite out of their day today to share some thoughts with us. And as Joe's always said, this chamber's here to help and assist in any way. We connect government to the employees, right? To the employers, and we're a connection for that. And that's why I think we're so strong and helpful. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the meeting, live or on the phone, and wish everybody a safe week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Hopefully to see you in person someday soon.
Yes, we did our first hybrid event yesterday. We did an in-person event with 25 people. We were outdoors under a tent, and we Zoom live. Kiko was the guest speaker. So we're experimenting with that because we did find, and we have found, because we have done several outdoor events and some indoors, people do want to get out. And as Michael mentioned, this would have been a much bigger audience if we were live. We've learned that from the past. But again, the availability of your time, knowing how busy your schedules are, is really greatly appreciated. I also want to thank Michael, our viewers, the business people that are taking time to watch this and to listen and learn. And I know that we'll be getting emails, Madam Secretary, after this saying I couldn't make it. What can you relay to me? So we'll be doing this. We'll also be putting this on social media, by the way. And Rayanne, are you listening, Rayanne?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Rayanne, tell them where this goes now. Rayanne's our guru, by the way. We want to say thank you to Rayanne, who's done our social media programming. Rayanne, can you tell them where this goes now? Because it doesn't end. It has its own life.
Yeah, so first off, I wanted to say thanks to Abel for putting his contact information in the chat for me, because I will send out a thank you email to everybody that's going to include this Zoom session, so that you can go back and listen to something if you need to. If you need to contact Abel, his contact information will be in there. And then we'll post it on YouTube. It goes to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so that if you either need to see it again or you know someone else who needs to hear what was said today, then that's a great way for them to share it out.
And I just want to say one final thing. This is Mike Sullivan's first meeting as chairperson of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce's Board of Directors Education Workforce Development Committee. I think he did a fantastic job. So let's give him a virtual round of applause.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you all. I hope you have a great day. Thank you, Madam Secretary. You've done a fantastic job. Abel, thank you. And thank you to all our business people who try to keep people employed in the Merrimack Valley. Michael, we'll talk later. Thank you so much. Thank you all.